That's better. Okay. So just a couple overall announcements before we get into today's discussion on meeting overload, which we're ever meeting about, which we've all joked about the irony of this. In any case, the spring 2024 meeting is coming up March 10th to 14th, Monday to Thursday, 9 to 11 a.m. on Mountain Time, every day on Zoom. The schedule is coming together. There's a couple spots I need to confirm still with presenters, but we've got a pretty good set of discussions and talks and some demos that I think are going to be really engaging, and I'm hoping to see a lot of you there. Registration is, as usual, due the Friday before. And the link, I sent that out. We have a blog post coming out about that soon, so you can share that around with anyone who might be interested in that. And similarly, we also got the webpage registration link, everything live for our summer school that's going to take place May 20 to 24, if I'm remembering the dates off the top of my head, right? Here at LASP in Boulder, Colorado. So get excited for that, and please be sharing that webpage and the blog post that's soon to come on it. Or the blog post already out. Go ahead and share it now. Sorry. Yeah, be sharing that with all the students, early career faculty you can think of who might be interested in attending. So, Sean, do you have any overall big announcements before we start?
Yeah, I have a couple things actually. This will take just 1 minute, but not a very long minute. First, I guess I have a pretty fun update. Well, I guess first, Julie, did you happen to mention this before I had joined the Telecon that we now have Zoom AI companion tools enabled in this Telecon?
No, I had not.
Yeah, I still don't know how they work, but if people notice down at the bottom of their Zoom bars, there should now be AI buttons like Start Summary and AI Companion and things like this, because CU Boulder has finally enabled us to flip the toggles to turn on these settings. That's the stuff where you can like Zoom will generate the meeting summary for you, or you can like, if you join a meeting late, you can talk to the little AI and ask it, what did I miss? Catch me up, and things like that. So that might be fun. I'm getting a little pop-up on my screen now. AI Companion is on. Did someone just do something?
Yeah, I've used it before, so turned it on since I came late. So it's a good thing to just say what happened.
Sweet, exactly. Yeah. And I've been using a little custom script I wrote with OpenAI's Whisper API to generate meeting minutes with us before, but I'm really curious to see what Zoom's proprietary solution does with generating summaries of these telecons. I don't know if we'll have it working today this time to do that, but it would be cool if we did. So there's one thing, and I've got one more quick announcement and then like one very quick question before we jump over to the discussion. Let's see. And actually, I'll share my screen for this one real quick because this is pretty cool. This was not a planned accomplishment, but something that happened kind of out of nowhere was that we got a new GitHub Actions script to now check PRs that come through when new packages are asking to join PyHC. I was reviewing a package that I believe you pronounce his name Alexis Jondet. He was trying to add just a couple new packages, and he decided he'd messed up the keywords, I think. So he made this little GitHub action script that now exists every time anyone opens a PR. That's this prchecker.py. And at the moment, all it really does is make sure that every PyHC project in our YAML files has evaluation badges and is using at least one keyword, and that all the keywords come from the taxonomy, that no one's just like made up some crap and thrown it in there. So that's really cool, actually. And he volunteered himself to go ahead and keep building this up as kind of like, just if we think of any new checks that we should be automatically doing to make sure trivial mistakes don't happen when people try to add new packages to PyHC. And there's currently a little PR going on right there where he's adding some additions to it. So that's exciting. Yeah, didn't ask the guy to do that at all. Just offered it up out of nowhere, and I decided it was brilliant, so I merged it. That was cool. And then one last thing, this is maybe more of like a question, but we've got a submission right now for a new package. It's this Bicep project. And I guess the first question would be, has anyone on this call actually heard of this? It is not a PyHC, it is not a Python package per se. It is a new format, like a binary scintillation exchange format. And apparently he gave a talk about it at the European Space Weather Week, and a few people suggested that he might throw it in here, but I'm trying to decide if it's relevant or not, because there's not really any Python in this project other than there's a script to convert the file formats to HTML5, or there's like a plotting tool to plot these Bicep data files, if that's how you pronounce that. But it's really just a new data format. So quick yes or no, has anyone used this or heard of it before?
I haven't personally heard of it.
Nope. I had not heard of it either.
I would lean towards inclusion, just from the point of view of, Happy, for instance, is an API and a specification. I
Mhm.
guess the core Happy project in some sense isn't, but the Python writers are, right? So, if you have a specification that's implemented in Python, that seems reasonably within our bailiwick.
I don't know that the specification itself is written in Python. The way the guy explained it to me, there's this PDF right here that explains the format description. And he said this is basically the entire contents of the repo. He said the little Python tools to plot or convert them to HDF5 was just a nice thing he added. He said he's maybe willing to add some slight documentation on how these Python scripts work if that's good enough to push him over the line and have him join PyHC, but there's no plans to develop this out further or do anything. The question is really just like, yeah, does this belong in PyHC? And I'm really on the fence about it, actually. This is one of the first times I'm considering turning someone down, but it's up in the air.
Why don't you leave it open so folks have a chance to take a closer look at it? I can certainly spend some time and have a more informed opinion.
Oh, cool.
But
Maybe,
well,
I would
sorry,
kind-
have more informed than I currently am by actually looking at it, not necessarily more informed than you. Let's be clear.
yes.
Maybe
but-
maybe we should ask for a little blurb about how this is relevant, like what sort of instrument would generate a data set compatible with this, and is it likely to be used on a heliophysics mission or ground-based instrument or something similar?
Okay, yeah, I'll do that, because I'd already sort of had a thought in mind to just ask the guy to pitch it to me a little bit, like, why should I include you? I don't normally make people do that, but this seems kind of like a weird case.
I think that's a good idea.
Okay,
Well, maybe that becomes a standard thing that you do for people, like just give 1 to 3 sentences about your relevance to the heliophysics community.
gotcha.
Do-
How
Yeah,
about
it
Do
should
we
be
have
some.
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I would think a package should have greater utility than just for like scintillation recording or whatever that particular thing is. If it was used in a widely used community model or something like that, or in maybe useful for another package in a PyHC.
that is also one thing that he said too, is that that is not the case. He said the user base is currently very small. So there's that too. Anyway, I think I'll leave the discussion there so we can move on. I put a link to this PR in the Zoom chat. Please look at it if you're interested, and maybe Julie, if we can
Yeah, I'll share it wider.
this in like the after meeting report or whatever.
Sean, do we have a PR template specifically for requesting a package for inclusion?
No, we do not.
I would suggest that we make one and include in that, explain the relevance to PyHC and the broader, to PyHC, to the broader heliophysics community, et cetera, whatever we want to have it. But that might help solicit that and not feel like you're necessarily singling anybody out in the future.
Good point. And actually, we since we started going down this rabbit hole of adding GitHub PR checks to make sure people do things right, and in these PRs, maybe we just keep that steam going and like add more to it. I might do that.
Do we want to add a criteria, sort of an expectation? If you are submitted to PyHC, you have to be at least open to listening to requests from the heliophysics community. So that people aren't just like, oh, I want you to list my package. But then someone's like, oh, hey, can you make your scintillator work, with this particular instrument? Oh, no, I'm mostly in particle physics. Wait, what?
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that.
I think it'd be good for them to be open to at least hearing what the community wants from them.
It can just be a soft sentence or two to set that expectation, not necessarily a signed contract.
No, absolutely. But, joining PyHC should come with like at least the smallest amount of commitment to participate in the community. We are not just free advertising for your package. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, sweet. Well, thank you guys for doing that with me.
Cool. Thanks for bringing that up, Sean. John, I know you don't have a ton of slides, but you can go ahead and start with the bit
Yeah.
you.
Actually, if I can start with the digression into other news, which is to push people on looking at FEP1, and particularly we're looking at the question of immutable versus mutable once approved. So I'm going to throw a bunch of links in the chat. So there's a link to that specific discussion. And then two more things that are kind of good follow-ons coming off of that. One is the template, which should not be too big of a deal. But then the other is chipping on a kind of implementation of the nuts and bolts if this gets approved, actual technical process for doing stuff. So those are the three links that I've thrown into chat. And if people have time to devote to any of them, it'd be much appreciated. Particularly on the implementation side, so that Sean doesn't have to figure it all out himself. That's just stuff like do this in Zenodo, do that in Zenodo to actually pull things off that I don't think people need to approve as such. It's just how do we get the DOI issued appropriately.
And we are going to be voting on FEP1 at the spring meeting as our first vote for it.
Fingers crossed, yeah. Don't count this as the formal announcement. We do need to do the formal announcement at some point, but I'm hoping we can converge on the discussion in time to be able to do that.
Yeah, that was more of, I suppose, an intention setting sentence.
Yes. All right. But that's a good reminder. We do need to do actually a formal. Alrighty. So hopefully my screen is shared, and this came out of a conversation at Dash, I think, or actually it's probably Idea was getting onto that, where someone was pointing out that we really do need to actually have folks at events such as SciPy and such, and realizing that this might get tricky. So I just went through, and this year the set of meetings that have either a heavy informatics component or are informatics oriented, but definitely within heliophysics. So that's excluding the NSF trio, which tends to not have quite so much informatics, but is of great interest to us, domain specific, or things that have very little science components, such as PyCon, the ACM SIGs, the ground systems workshop, that kind of thing. So excluding those, kind of right up the center of PyHC, I count, what is that? 10 meetings that are planned that we really should be engaged with and participating in. And there's just no way we can all be at this. Go ahead, Rebecca.
You're missing one.
Okay, yep. What am I missing?
So headquarters is putting together a science-wide software workshop. That's going to be at the beginning of May.
Yeah.
Let's increase the insanity, but it's supposed to be really good. It is, you know, of course, all of these are quite good, but
Okay,
there you go.
So that's an SMD wide one.
Yes.
Okay. Do you know where that's going to be?
To be determined.
Okay.
They're working on it.
Alrighty. I will add that before I get to the slides, which I think is starting to push us from that 15% of the year towards about 20% of the year. Yikes. Okay, so clearly, like we can't just ignore this. So I've got two pieces of thought on this. One is that we're going to need to do some sort of divide and conquer, I think. And it might be something like each of these has a couple of folks from PyHC that go. Maybe it's based on, you know, having one or two of the core packages at each. Maybe we do some stuff where we're doing PyHC presentations instead of just you know, instead of just about our packages, or maybe we have one poor sucker go and present on 3 different packages. And that's the out. And then we also need to get the in so that whoever's there theoretically representing the community can go and find stuff of interest and get some reporting back in. And I'll update some of those dates from the chat afterwards. So then there's, of course, the next question. Sorry. Which is, how do we pay for this? Which is kind of our ongoing thing. So the topical workshop, symposia, and conferences call, if I've got that right, does allow you to propose to get funding to go to conferences, but that tends to be quite small, and there's definitely problems with trying to administer fairly small grants in a lot of our institutions. We also can continue to do the dig into whatever other funding we have. And this has a very weird thing that, for instance, folks who are on hard money like faculty, there tends to be an expectation of service. That's part of the job requirements and thus comes from the funding. For those of us who are on soft money, which is true of a lot of us here, where does service fit in? And should we be, you know, more ambitious in our proposals? Like a lot of the HDEs, they've often been written quite thin. And do we need to start talking about, hey, look, these need to be maybe multi-year to be worth the administration? And then also, you know, write in, okay, this is not just 50K for doing software. I need to put in enough to go to a meeting or two, cover my time during that meeting. And that's going to make those proposals quite a bit larger, but also a lot more realistic. And, you know, part of that then is also in terms of funding agencies writing those calls and the teams evaluating them. You need to not feel like you're going to be disadvantaged because you're actually asking for travel funding instead of just, you know, 30K, 50K for doing this on the software. Because I think that this engagement thing's a really core part of what we're doing. And I think that's hopefully shared by most of the people in this room. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. So that's all I've got, is just kind of throwing those ideas out. And what do you want to talk? I'm going to turn those slides off. They're probably less useful. So have at.
Yep, well, it's easy for me to react to that because my salary actually does directly support me doing PyHC things, and I do get paid by LASP to attend a lot of the conferences I do attend. So where it's possible, I mean, I think it makes sense for, if people are overloaded with meetings, you could send me and or Julie as a representative of PyHC, and I think we're kind of happy to do that stuff, but that's not a solution to every single thing. That's just the easy first comment I have to make.
Yeah, I mean, I really like traveling, so I'm not against actually going places a lot. But at the very least, for reducing travel load, this is but one of that huge list there. But I was thinking for PyHC moving forward, we could just plan to have one in person meeting a year and then have the other one be online to try and make it a bit less of a stress on folks.
You mean like the spring versus fall meetings? Talking
Mhm.
about those?
Yeah.
That would probably make sense, actually.
Yeah, especially because, well, I don't know which season would be better, but for this year, it worked out better for a spring meeting to be online since we have the summer school coming up and people are going to be coming here anyway. But I'd be open to hearing just in general what people prefer. I know the fall gets really cramped and booked up, but so does the spring.
There's
Yeah.
still the matter of there's some travel expenses saved. There's also, the actual time involved in engaging in the virtual meeting.
It's true.
There is that. And I was actually going to say that is like the only negative I can come up with for my travel, because I, like Julie, also do enjoy the travel part of this job. But the problem becomes when I'm spending so much time traveling that now I don't have enough time to sit in my cave and write code and do the things that I'm like supposed to be doing for PyHC, right? Which isn't usually an issue, but it does happen every once in a while. So there is that to think about too.
And it's just become very obvious by writing this down that USRSE is the same week as Dash this year.
Uh-oh.
There was no good week to put it.
No, that's always true, and that's why I mean,
This adds.
reducing our meeting load is one thing, but I kind of want to think this also as strategically increasing our meeting footprint.
Yeah.
Which are conflicting interests. It's like, let's go to less meetings and be at more.
Well, if we're dividing and conquering, it could be more doable. But Rebecca, it looks like you have thoughts.
Yeah, usually. But these seem to be worth saying. So there's been an idea knocking around in my head for a couple weeks at least, that looking forward over what I see coming with the software and heliophysics, and more, and that's currently wider than PyHC, is that eventually, and it seems that sooner than I was thinking, that this is going to become a job too big for two people. So I think it's something worth discussing about collecting what the PyHC community wants of leadership, deciding how many people we need on that leadership team, and then figuring out what that could look like. Like, would it be we need more FTE from the funding, or do we need some sort of elected PyHC leadership team that gets cycled? Not, of course, Julie and Sean stay all the time because that's their job, but like, would there be volunteers from the community rotating through PyHC leadership? And maybe one of the benefits of being on that leadership team is you get funding to go to, I don't know, 3 conferences per year to represent PyHC. To spread that load, that maybe that can help. Another idea I put in the chat was maybe PyHC can apply for funding to send members to these different conferences and report back. But then do you want it? You really got to navigate carefully, like who is sent, are they going to represent PyHC or their own special interests? Is it a problem to do that? There's always going to be politics involved with those things.
Yeah, we don't have Brian on the call, do we? Brian Thomas, are you here?
Oh no, you're lucky to get him on a call.
I don't.
He's
didn't
so
think
busy.
we did.
But that would be something to bring up.
I can ask him about it. I know funding is in a little bit of a weird state at the moment, but
Yeah, so maybe the whole elected rotation thing, like some sort of team. So this should definitely be discussed at the spring meeting if there's time, with everybody that's interested in attending. So, because there should be a process, like if someone's going to be representing PyHC, do they agree with and align with the PyHC standards? How much do they do that? That should probably be one of the requirements. How involved are you already in the community versus, I don't know. I'm sure you can all think of other things that should be required or at least looked at.
Yeah. Julie, can you take the small action item to note down that we should spend at least some time in the spring meeting discussing that?
already on like my mind for where it goes.
Okay, awesome. Because yeah, I mean, it shouldn't be hard to have at least one conversation of like, what would you as community members want from leadership in like the ideal world, and we could kind of go from there.
Yeah, I do think it's important to maintain a pretty strong grassroots nature where people who are um, contributing to PyHC and involved are also using what comes out and having not too many people for whom just PyHC is the key part of the job. It has to be because this is a cross-disciplinary overlapping kind of thing.
To
And I
that
think
point, John,
keeping that strength is important.
it was the most beautiful thing in the world, John, when Alexis just added that PR checker to our GitHubs for new PyHC projects because it made his new edition of his new PyHC package nicer. And that's exactly the kind of grassroots bottom up kind of stuff that, yes, we do want to encourage and not make this a top down thing.
Yeah, I think we can look at some analogies too. I'm thinking of, on the leadership side, we need to look at AGU, ACM, USRSE. How do they manage things? How do people take care of that other than just calling it service and uncompensated? I know the AGU end, it's awfully close to just calling it service and uncompensated. And the analogy with the scientific output, nobody says boo if you put in, a guest investigator and includes 2 bits of travel a year, right? I mean, it's considered pretty fundamental. So I think there needs to be a bit of a cultural shift here.
Yeah. Would it be worth, I'm curious, getting a pulse of the other people in the room? I'm curious who else in this wall of names I'm looking at also feel burnt out from the number of meetings you are attending annually and things like that. Maybe like a thumbs up or something if you agree at least that the number of meetings at the moment is too high and you would like less. Give everyone like a few seconds to find their thumbs up button and to do that. Nick and Joe, Candy. So it's at least not just the 4 of us over here. Some other people agree that this is also an issue.
So I'd like to propose a slightly different poll. How many of you would like to go to more meetings but can't justify it?
Ooh, that's a good one.
We have a lot of
actually,
it
I'm
only
not gonna
goes to
lie.
4.
I would probably thumbs up that too, just because the meetings are fun. So maybe that's good news that we at least don't hate the meetings that we are at when we're there. So
Do we have any? Sorry.
yeah, I mean, I was gonna say like, I'm just trying to think of if anything's come out of that so far, and really just the idea of like travel stipends and bumping up leadership to have roles to represent at certain things are the most actionable thoughts I've heard so far.
So I think, Julie, can you, if you're talking to Brian, I know he's thinking of trying to have a little bit more routine support, at least for the core packages. Can you bring this up in that context as well? Because I can totally see saying, hey, if you're getting fundamental support as a core package, you need to go to X number of meetings and be not just yourself, but also representing the community in some way.
I think that seems reasonable.
Yeah, it kind of goes toward the whole no free advertising thing I mentioned at the beginning of this. Because if core packages are setting a good example for everyone else and participating at a high level. Yeah, I was going to ask you, Julie. I know you have been in talks with Brian about money stuff. Has anything come up that's relevant to this, or has that not got that far yet?
Not that far yet.
Okay, I didn't really think so.
Do we have any general thoughts on what all we've been discussing so far from the people who haven't spoken up so far? I think there's been 4 or 5 of us talking, but there's 21 on the call.
Well,
I think so.
maybe
go
we
ahead.
could have a standing agenda item on these meetings, like what meetings are coming up in the next, few weeks to a month, and who's planning on going, and is there anybody who would want to like piggyback on them? Like, oh, could you present something on my package as well, or get them to do a report out?
Oh yeah. Yeah, John, you had at least maybe that's a good reason, John, for you to have compiled the names of the conferences into one slide.
Yeah, actually, I am happy to take that as a standing contribution from me. It gives me a reason to try to show up on these meetings.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, just a simple like, hey, good morning, everyone, as a check-in. Is there a meeting coming up in the next 2 weeks?
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
That'd be good.
Because yeah, I do not personally ever have a good view of who's going to what meetings when, and this would be a good opportunity to make that visible.
Yeah, I wonder if we couldn't note it somewhere, I don't know, in a spreadsheet or something of like the names of the meetings, and don't step on that cat. Who all is planning to go to, each meeting, spread the love and make sure it's not the same person every time.
Yeah, I can
Do
try to work
we
up a
have-
Google Sheet or something, and then we can actually even link that off of the PyHC site so people can see what's coming up.
Yeah,
Or
that'd be great.
we have a Google Calendar on the homepage of PyHC's website. We could add events there.
Right. We could also add it there. I think it'd be nice to just have a list of everything in one spot though, so we can see all the names together.
Agreed.
Not have it
That would be nice.
But that's a good point. We should also add it to the calendar. I had like a 5-minute blurb at the end of our spring meeting where I wanted to actually bring up all these meetings and say what's coming up and who's going to what.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Ooh, and actually, because I'm sure no one's looked at this because no one actually uses the meetings page, but I refactored the meetings page on the PyHC website recently. So there would actually be a really nice clean spot for us to put a link to a little like all of the conferences we go to spreadsheet.
Thank you so much for doing that. Everyone should check it out. It's much cleaner and easier to navigate now. Nick, did you ever get to say the thing you wanted to say?
Nope. I was gonna say that maybe a lot of us weren't talking because we're burnt out, not just from meetings, but from everything in general. So, but also, Julie and Sean especially, do you have like a stock presentation for PyHC that we could share around more globally?
I should.
Yeah, you've given that talk so many dozens of times.
I've given a lot of variations of that.
Yeah, I think like preparing presentations can take a lot of time and effort. So that would help. Also, I'm happy to be ambassador to the plasma community.
Yeah,
Appreciate
you're
you.
good at that.
That's an interesting idea of ambassadors from PyHC to other communities. Maybe that's part of how to map out volunteers to cycle through, if that's the idea we go with, or some variation. Like we need someone from this community, from that community, or maybe the science communities themselves are rotated. Like we probably don't need 7 people on a volunteer board right now, maybe 3.
Yeah,
but
but like if there was a meeting with heliophysics stuff that we knew would have a particularly high plasma physics attendance, we might throw Nick at it or like that kind of thing.
right, but throw Nick with a funded trip.
Yeah.
That has to be, you have to find a way to avoid choosing the same person all the time. Like, yeah, our leaders right now, the ones that are just that pop up, like Nick pops up and John pops up as leaders right now. If you always lean on them, they will eventually break and say, sorry, we got to sign off this time. It's too much. But so some sort of way to cycle through and not lean on the same people all the time and the same packages, I guess. Some sort of distribution like that.
Absolutely.
I agree with that. It's part of why I want to get a list of all the meetings with names on them so we can see and make sure that that's not happening.
Yeah. And I'm starting to go down implementation details in my head. I need to pull myself out of that. But I'm wondering, like, if on this spreadsheet there even could be a column for like PyHC members who are attending or something like that. Or although maybe we don't want to make that publicly viewable information. So let me
Yeah, don't throw a bunch of names on the page. That's a problem.
know. So maybe this is more of an internal document or some kind of thing. But yes, also knowing who plans on going to what meetings would be a nice thing to see.
Actually, that's a really good point. I like the idea of having like a public spreadsheet so people know, but so far we haven't had an issue, but I am worried about stalker behavior to some extent.
Yeah, that starts to feel like weird Big Brother government stuff and potential scam fodder.
Yeah, I hadn't thought too
So-
hard about that, but that's good.
Yeah, so honestly, like one thing I can just immediately put on that thing is a link to the code of conduct for each meeting. Because that's definitely a meeting code of conduct kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's always good to prioritize based on whether a meeting has intelligent code of conduct.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, these are good things. And hey, if one of the most things we get out of this is that now John can be the sports announcer for the upcoming conferences at the top of each telecon, that's going to be awesome. So I'm already happy that we've been talking about this.
Yeah, and if anybody else wants that job, feel free to throw your hat in the ring, either now or to Julie later. I don't need to hold on to that with my cold dead hands.
Ooh, what is, I'm seeing something from Barbara about a comprehensive calendar.
Analytics calendar.
Well, it's the heliophysics community event calendar that we maintain. We try to have everything in it. And one of the thing that I was hoping to do is get it so that it works with Google Calendar events have metadata that you can add. And so you could add a field that just says so that you could flag what particular thing there is. But the Google plugin doesn't really work. The Google Calendar plugin doesn't really work with the metadata. And so one easy thing might be you already have the PyHC calendar. I can just make a couple of you editors, and if you find something relevant to PyHC, you can just copy it over.
Yes, please. That would be great.
All you gotta do is all you gotta do is add duplicate event and just say, and I do that with some of the community calendars there. That's the way I try it so that every possible meeting that anyone in heliophysics would want to know about is on it. And I do that by being an editor of some other calendar and just copying, and so if I don't see it on either of the calendars, then I put it on, like, I'm an editor of the solar meetings calendar. I add it to the solar meetings calendar as well as the heliophysics event calendar. But
Well,
if one's in there and it's not in the other, I copy them over. So I'll add you, Julie. And yeah, sorry, I didn't respond to your email, but I did add the event. So
Oh, all good. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
yeah. So
yeah, and actually that does nothing but help us with like advertising the spring meetings and the summer school and whatnot
Yeah.
too. So heck yeah, that's an awesome thing.
yeah, I hired a contractor last year who was supposed to write the interface to use the full Google like all of the metadata in the calendar so that you could query the calendar. You could say, I only want the ones that have machine learning. I only want something that's got magnetospheric in it. And so we could have all the parameters flagged. But guy just sort of went around and just sort of played with software and didn't really do it. So that was a bummer. So we still have the app plugin. I mean, the standard Google Calendar plugin. But our hope is that we could have something that's a little bit more functional, so everyone could say, hey, this is, I only want to look for these, or hey, this is a relevant meeting for me. I'll just copy this to my personal calendar. And then people only need one calendar for our community because they can, or they can say, what meetings are in my area. I only want the ones that are in Boulder because I don't have travel funds or something.
Yeah. And remind me, because I don't use Google Calendar a whole lot because I'm like an Apple person, but does Google Calendar have the thing where you have like multiple calendars baked into one calendar and you can toggle them on and off to like,
Yes.
yeah, that's a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
you can like mine has a million calendars in it and things, and so you can do that. So that's a thing that we could do too, is we could have like multiple calendars. I've been trying to avoid that. I'd like to have just one and then have the metadata take care of it, you know. But but again, I just
No,
didn't manage to do that. Yeah. Another nice thing about the doing it with the database and metadata populating it is you can export it to other calendar types, and so it's so that the thing driving it would be a database of calendars that populates the Google Calendar and also can populate on other things. That was the thing that we were trying to get towards, is as a full database with all the possible metadata you'd want. And then, you know, so the guy finished writing the script that can update the calendar, and but he didn't really get any of the metadata stuff written or any of the querying possibilities. So it was a, you know, it's the way it goes.
yeah. So
But
that's
in the
that's
long
still
run, I think it would be very, for the community, it's really valuable to have something like a single place where you can look, see what's going on, find the links. I've been trying to put in abstract deadlines for major meetings too, and session deadlines so people can see that. But you know, yeah, just you know, like I've ever finished a project on time, you know, so I can't complain too much.
But no, absolutely. I think an important tool in combating this meeting burnout is at least having a good grasp on what they all are, and that having a calendar like that and all that really brings that easily. Thanks for bringing that up, and yeah, we should make that more visible.
Yeah. Probably get a link to that on our page. I just slacked you about
Awesome. Thank you for slacking me about that, Julie.
it.
I agree. Maybe I'll open it back up. Anyone else who hasn't gotten a chance to put in a thought yet? Anyone sitting on a thought they want to share?
I have a partially formed thought.
Yeah.
That maybe I could formulate as I speak. I'm thinking about the sequence of meetings, Cedar, Gem, Shine, that John pointed out that there really isn't an informatics component. And I've definitely noticed at Cedar that the Python session or two has for years, let me say, struggled. Somebody can push back against that if they want to establish relevance against the other science, topic specific, more traditional theater sessions. And that just may be the reality, but I'm wondering, as we talk about this, if there's a way to make it clear that there are PyHC members at a meeting, and have identified some people who could be there as advocates, or advocates for the group, in case there are other people, other attendees who are curious about the group. Yeah, I think, okay, that's basically my partially formed thought, and I can clarify it as we discuss it.
So Matt, that's spinning off a whole other idea to me, which is, I haven't been to Cedar. I've been to Gem a lot. We had these like student tutorials, and I think a lot of other meetings, maybe we're not going there as PyHC to present as PyHC, But gosh darn it, if we can be available to the organizing committee and say, if you're doing anything into way of Python tutorials or something, there's this whole other community you need to know about that can be a resource for you. And particularly if some of us start doing software carpentry and that kind of thing, that's a whole other means of engaging and being involved. And then hopefully, in that case, maybe the organizing committee of that meeting would have funding.
That is a good point, especially for, well, I mean, yeah, Cedar has a student day on the Sunday preceding the conference proper, and that might be an entry point for something like this. I mean, mostly, again, just to clarify, I'm thinking of the reason a student day would be especially good is because I'm thinking of let's say grad students who are starting in the particular field and wouldn't necessarily know about PyHC, wouldn't know who to ask, may not even know to use that term, but are just sort of curious to know if there is a software, a Cedar or Gem or Shine adjacent committee that is focused on the software more than on the side.
Yeah, thank you.
One other thing I was going to bring up, just reminded of, at the APS Division of Plasma Physics meeting for the last 2 years, Plasma Pi has had a table in the exhibitor hall, which has gotten us a lot of great visibility. And not all heliophysics meetings have exhibitor halls, but it'd be a possibility for the future, like AGU meetings, maybe SPD meetings, to do something like that, or to just get a table and like put it in the hall somewhere with like a banner in front of the.
Yeah, reminds me of my tabling days back at CU Boulder. But yeah, like a little black cloth with like the PyHC logo printed on it real big, slap it over a table. It looks real professional.
Yeah.
And t-shirts.
And t-shirts.
I wonder if that's something that's fundable, like part of our grant, or if they're gonna say it's like souvenirs and we don't do that. We ran through that whole issue with the stickers, but we should look into that.
Oh yeah, and Barbara in the chat suggests some Pi Q&A sessions were popular. Maybe that suggests a PyHC Q&A session could be helpful.
Yeah, sure. Do we have any more overall thoughts? I want to be cognizant of the fact that we don't need to keep the meeting going just to talk if we don't have more thoughts. Being that this is a meeting on having too many meetings and
yeah,
so forth. I
actually sort of did have one thing. I don't want to bring it up if anyone else has anything else to say, but I do have a thing about tests to bring up. So I'll be silent for a second. Going once? Going twice? Okay. Yeah, I guess because a lot of the topic here has been meeting burnout. I wanted to bring up tests because that is an upcoming meeting that I think a lot of us are going to. And I actually have sort of like not ideal news about it. So I was maybe going to broach the subject of if we want to try very hard to actually make the real-time solar eclipse display thing actually happen, or if we might say this is one less thing that we do this year. And maybe that's too big of a topic to bring up with like 7 minutes till the top of the hour. But I am bringing it up because at the PyHC spring meeting in 2023, when I first brought it up, there was like some interest, but not a whole lot of interest from people in actually participating in that. Generally, the feel from the community I got was that we don't have very many real-time display tools in PyHC packages at the moment because it's not a huge important need. And ironically enough, Russell from PySat was like the main guy who said he was going to sit down with me and like build out something. And he's the one person from PyHC who sort of disappeared and doesn't seem like is coming back. So I guess maybe the question is I might be making this year easier on us by not making people work together to make a cool demo for tests.
So Tess is still going to have an Eclipse break, right? And Eclipse theme going with things. So we're not the only ones holding the Eclipse line on this, correct?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I would say punting is fine then, rather than rushing and adding something to our schedule, unless someone has something super compelling that they want to bring.
Yeah, I would agree with that because there's seemed to be nothing really ready for prime time yet.
Yeah, we recently got just to clarify, Tess is doing its own solar eclipse viewing thing that's like totally independent of us, but we had been given like a room that directly after the eclipse we have like a big TV screen or like a projector screen where we could throw up like some real-time data plots of some values that would have been affected by the solar eclipse, like dips in temperature or brightness or whatever. And we could have some scientists standing around it. People could go look at it just as one other like scientific, ooh, look at how that changed, and to continue appreciating the eclipse. But that is just extra unpaid work for people who would be having to throw that together. So it might become we just attend tests, do whatever else we were doing with PyHC, and just enjoy the eclipse without that work attached to it. And hey, that helps with the meeting burnout because that's less work for people. But, it also is a cool thing that we could do. So I don't know, I guess I just wanted to throw that out there as like the last thing I had in my mind.
So is it, we have this table and we have to either fill it or relinquish it, or would it be effort to take over the table?
No one's like fighting for this room or anything. This little room with a projector screen.
So if we wanted to keep and do some PyHC PR, you could set it up with your ChatGPT interface to Helio Cloud and just one big banner saying, want to know more about, heliophysics? Ask this chat thing your questions.
We actually
and then it's a hands-off thing that gives some PyHC promo, but it's only loosely tied to the eclipse. It's more like if you want to dig deeper, ask this ChatGPT thing.
Yep, that is super valid and totally could happen.
Because I don't like to give up space if it's been allocated as part of it.
Yeah.
Free ad space is kind of like the thing here.
Yep, exactly.
And I'm going to test. I could help you with that if you need people power.
Okay, sweet. And yeah, Brent, I saw your message that you'll reach out to me about tests. I'll look forward to that. But yeah, I didn't have anything else.
All right. Well, if we don't have anything else, I can let us know. Our next Telecon is not in 2 weeks, but 3. It'll be on February 12th. And we have Tung Jae-un coming to talk about a magnetosheath model tool that he's been putting together. And communicating with him, it sounds like he's more in the preliminary stages and may want some tips, helpful hints, what to think about, where to go to learn about doing more things like releasing, packaging, that kind of thing. So I'll send out the usual meeting reminder about that the week before. And if people could take a look or think of some things that might be helpful for someone who's more of a junior developer to think about. That'd be really cool to be able to offer that as a community to someone coming to us for help. So
Yeah, cool. And I've also had this this AI summary thing, I believe, running in the background the whole time we've discussing this. So we can also share out the written summary of this discussion, because we've had some important points to be captured. And hey, we can also see for the first time how Zoom does at summarizing Zoom meetings as opposed to OpenAI.
yeah, be curious to see the differences.
Yeah, I've been taking some more conventional notes too, so yet another thing we can do a
That always
difference on.
Woo. Thanks very much. I'll send
I-
out a reminder email, but don't forget about, registering for the spring meeting and sharing about our summer school as much as is possible.
And I got a lot out of this, so thank you, everyone.
Yeah, me too. I'm actually like really, I feel much better now than an hour ago on this topic. People came up with some really good short-term things that can help us move forward. So thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. See you again on February 12th.